Hey, everybody. Good to see you. Yay. It's been a while since I was here. It's great to be here. So if this thing works, wow, it does. Yeah, a couple of years ago, about 2.5 years ago, I did a kind of a personal pivot and dived into AI and got kind of fascinated by it. So ever since then, about 2.5 years, I've been working full-time, applying this technology, learning about it, building stuff. And what's interesting about it is, even though there's a lot of hype around it, I think most people really underestimate how powerful it is and how crazy the stuff going on is, especially the rate of improvement. I get mind blown by it pretty much every week, even though I work with it. So that's kind of going to be a bit of the topic today, talking about like, what does this mean? What does it mean for product development? What does it mean for Agile? What does it mean for leadership, kind of at a high level? So the reason why I think a lot of people underestimate the power of this technology is because you kind of need these things to really make use of it. You need access to a really good AI model. You need access to really good tools and products that use those models. And you need skills, how to use it, like prompt engineering, or the knowledge of which tools I use when and how do I use them. And I think people underestimate the technology because they lack one or all of these things. I'm going to show some examples that I hope will be a bit inspiring of what it looks like, what the world kind of looks like and feels like when you have access to good models, good tools, and decent skills as a user. And then we'll do a bit of reflection. So I'll be showing some quick examples from different parts of the product development lifecycle. And then we'll go into reflection mode. So the first one is just a little silly experiment that I did a few months ago. I just took a picture of a napkin sketch, this one, to-do list, and I gave it to Claude just with my phone, took a picture of it, and I said, build it. That was my whole prompt. Build it plus the picture. 20 seconds later, I had a clickable working to-do list app, which was like, whoa, interesting. 20 seconds later, it had deadlines. Or maybe it took 10 seconds for me to read that prompt in. So let's say 30 seconds later. And then another half minute or so later, it had tabs, a home tab, a work tab, and I could split things up a little bit. And then just for fun, I'm like, what happens if I just goof around a little bit, make it angry? And it made an angry to-do list. It's like, oh, wow, okay. And I thought that's a little bit negative. So I asked to make a children's version, and then boom, I had a really cute kind of gamified children's version. And continuing on this theme, I was like, okay, what if I were to build this for real? I asked it to write a design document describing what this is at a high level, which could be good input to development. And then I asked it to make a backlog. And this took maybe 2 or 3 iterations, and I had a pretty well-shaped, well-sliced product backlog for this hypothetical product. And I'm like, okay, what if I want to build this? I want to put this out on iOS. How do I do that? I have no idea. So I asked it, and it's like, okay, here are the steps. Here are the steps you got to go through. And one of the steps is write the code, but I'll do that for you. So the code writing is just a tiny part of it, and that's what AI is going to do for me. And continuing on that, I was like, okay, so let's say I've done all this. I'm going to need an icon. Okay, no prob. ChatGPT, right? make an icon. And why not a silly product box? Okay, I didn't make a product box, but it's kind of fun, right? Looking at the things you can do with technology, all these things, which was maybe about 10 minutes of work in total. How long would this have taken without AI? I don't know, hours, days, right? It's quite mind-blowing. So I find that this is not just about increasing productivity. I find that it changes the fundamental nature of product development. Here's another example, building a new product. My colleague Hans, I don't know if he's here, but if not, he's 2 floors above, because that's where our office is. Build versus buy. What if build is almost free? The case in point was he was going to build he needed a search engine optimization tool. We wanted to find out which keywords in this AI startup, which keywords lead to us and which don't. And of course, there's a gazillion tools around for that. But he got upset, he got frustrated by the fact that they seemed complicated, expensive. He couldn't decide what to use. And finally, he's like, screw it. I'll just hack it up. So he just started prompting. And then half a day later, he had this pretty, professional looking, quite advanced actual product that was optimized for our exact needs for SEO. Really interesting, right? The kind of stuff that you would never consider building this kind of thing yourself in the past. You would obviously buy it or something. Now it's like, half a day. Now I have exactly the tool that we need. So yeah, it's interesting how it really changes the way we think about product development. He used a tool called Cursor. He didn't touch the code. He didn't even look at the code to build this thing. He just put it into production, and we're using it today. And the tool we used was Cursor, which is a tool I've been using almost full-time for the past 1.5 years. It's a VS Code fork with the code over there to the left, and then AI chat and agent to the right. Now, what's interesting is how, like, let's take a look at coding productivity levels, right? Traditional coding is you sit there and you type code into an editor and you hope you get it right. And you don't. So you get it wrong, and then you go online and you search for help, and you go to Stack Overflow or whatever, and you fiddle around a little bit, and after a while you get it to kind of work. It's very fiddly, but also still kind of fun. Then ChatGPT came, especially GPT-4, which was the first model that actually was useful for coding. And now AI, coding became copy-paste. Copy code into ChatGPT, hope you gave it the right context, type a prompt, hey, can you fix this or that? Take the result, copy it back in, and hope you integrate it into the right place. It's easy to get it wrong, right? But it feels pretty dumb copy pasting back and forth, but it was still a lot better than before. And then Cursor came along, no more copy paste. I just type in the chat, hey, do this or that, and I tag the files that matter. And then it edits the code directly. So copy paste goes away, and it's another order of magnitude more productive. And then now Cursor agents, GitHub Copilot is catching up to this. There's something called GitHub Copilot agents, which is a little similar, but basically prompt and forget. Type a prompt, it will dig up the right context, and it'll fix errors as it finds them, and then refactor as it needs to, and then boom. It's like you have this personal development team which just does stuff. So I'll give a real life example of that, because most of us don't build new products. We work with existing code, right? So this is an AI agent platform that we've built in this AI startup. And the context is you build agents, right? An agent is like a little colleague. And so what I mean by agent is basically a large language model, and you give it a mission. For example, route invoices to the right department. Then you give it the tools it needs to do the job. Maybe it needs access to email, access to Slack, whatever it needs. And you give it some level of autonomy so it can react on its own to stuff coming in, for example. And case in point, agents, right? If you're going to make an agent that does something, it needs tools. And in our case, one of the tools we have is Notion, so it can talk to Notion. So I was sitting at an airport 2 weeks ago. I had a half hour to kill. I checked my email, and one of our customers was saying that, oh, the Notion thing's not working. And it turned out he had this more complex Notion document called a database. I don't know why it's called a database, but it's for more complex documents that have like maybe a to-do list or a Kanban board or something. Our agents couldn't deal with that. So I basically fired up Cursor, and I wrote, add support for Notion databases. Suggest which tools first. And then just for in case, I gave it a link to the Notion API documentation. And that's it. Now the agent started digging around in the code, finding out how do we use Notion today, and started reading the API specification. And then it came up with a suggestion for 6 tools to add. Basically CRUD, like list, get, create, update, for databases based on the API. So I looked at that, and I'm like, that sounds kind of sensible. So I said, go ahead and build it. And then it just started chugging along for like maybe 5 minutes, and I'm sitting there eating sushi, right? This is an example of one of the 6 tools it created. Very nicely integrated into our existing code. And that's what I think is kind of cool, because it's reading the code. It's not just throwing stuff on top. It's integrating nicely into it, right? So it created 6 tools like this, and then it was done. So I was like, okay. So I stopped eating for a few seconds, fired up our platform, created an agent, and then I called it Notion tests, and I just told it, hey, list all your Notion database tools and test them. So it's like, okay, I can do these 6 things, so I guess I'll better test it. I'll make a database, and let's see if I can see what's there. Let's see if I can change it. It ran its own it invented its own self-test routine and executed it, and gave me a rather detailed report about exactly how it worked. And then I did a bit of spot checking just for in case to check that it did what it said it did. And that was it. So I pushed it into production. And what I find amazing is this whole thing, evaluating user feedback, discussing, designing, implementing, testing, and deploying 6 new tools, was 20 minutes of work while eating sushi at an airport. This is a bit extreme. It's not always going to be like this. We've optimized our environment for it. I'm very used to working like this. So there's going to be some situations, though, where it maybe takes a whole 1 hour to do something, right? But sometimes it takes 2 minutes. But the key point is it's an order of magnitude more productive once you have the right tools and know how to use them. So yeah, I get kind of mind blown almost every week, thinking like, I've been doing development for 30 years, and I feel like I'm living in some kind of weird fantasy land. This cannot be possible. And yet it's still improving pretty much every week. So a bit of reflection around this then. These were the examples. I hope they were interesting and inspiring. As a developer, you can now choose your level of laziness, right? Laziness is not necessarily a bad thing as a developer, right? Laziness is what causes us to automate things, for example. That's great. You can now choose. So the
concept of vibe coding, a new hot buzzword, is basically when you just write the code or you ask AI to write the code and you don't even read it yourself, right? That's what I did in the first two examples. Well, that's one option, right? 100% laziness, AI just does it. Or maybe, AI writes the code and I skim it and sanity check. That's what I did with the last example. I skimmed the code to sanity check it and then I pushed it. Or maybe AI writes the code and you read through every line and tweak lots of it. Or maybe it suggests code and you write it yourself. And of course, you still have the option to do things the old way, write it yourself. All these are options. I find personally that I would say 90% of my code is somewhere in that range. But one of the key things is, as a developer or as any kind of role, your attention span is a limited resource, and you get to choose where to spend it. So do you care about exactly how this code works or not? Sometimes yes, sometimes not. It's up to you to decide if you want to spend your attention span investigating the code or just push it to production and say, this is fine. And that's also part of the skill as a user of AI. You build up with experience an intuition for when should I really pay attention to my prompt and the code coming out, and when can I just be lazy and write one sentence and just push it, right? That's case by case. However, all these examples I showed you, even though AI did most of the coding, I was there too, or my colleague Hans was there too. There was a human there, and AI could not have done this without the human. So it really is a collaboration. It's not about AI taking over the job. It's about AI taking over some parts of the task and helping you do your job better. So developers like to code. Typically, that's why they become developers. And some are worried that, oh no, AI is going to get to do all the fun parts. But actually, the coding isn't really the fun part. The typing of lines of code isn't really the fun part. It's the making. It's solving problems, making cool stuff, and shipping it. That's what's fun. So once you get used to this, I find that even really hardcore developers are like, oh, this is really nice. Because the joy of coding was also the pain of coding, right? You get stuck on some really dumb problem for like a week. And there's less of that. So you spend more time at a higher level of abstraction, focusing on the problem to solve, focusing on architecture, finally having time to pay attention to quality, right? Which you maybe don't have time to otherwise. So it changes the nature of the game. But what I think is exciting is that it makes it more fun for basically everyone involved. Right now, at this moment, my wife is at home making a website for her windsurfing club. And she's just calling me like every hour, like, this is so fun. Because I showed her Lovable, which was the tool also used to build the Agile AI website, which basically lets you do vibe coding and build stuff. She's not a coder, but she's building a website. And she's like, wow, I just got superpowers. It's really fun. So I think the future is going to be somewhat like this. This is just guessing, but I think developers will still be needed, but not for writing code. So I think future generations will say, hey, Grandma, is it true that humans used to write code manually? And she's like, yeah, amazing, right? And the kid's like, well, wasn't that really hard? He's like, yeah, we were slow. We made a lot of mistakes, right? So yeah, punch cards used to be the way to build stuff, and then assembly language, machine code, this is what you needed to be good at. And then higher level programming languages came along, and now most people don't care about the machine code. We just trust the compiler to just sort that out. And that journey is pretty much continuing to just plain English. So at the moment, you kind of need to know how to code at least a little bit to build something a little more advanced. But over time, the knowledge of where to put the damn curly brace in Python, or how to write a efficient for loop in whatever language doesn't matter, not important anymore, right? Because AI will just do that. So what about the connection to Agile then, right? That was the promised theme of this talk. Agile is, I love Agile, right? It's great. This concept of small teams working in short feedback loops in tight collaboration with the customer just lets you build better stuff faster and have more fun along the way, right? I guess that's kind of why we're here. Well, I think that stays. I don't think that's going away. But the way we do it changes. Now that we have these kind of AI colleagues coming in, then we need to rethink everything. We really need to go back and rethink what are the fundamental assumptions behind Agile. Not because we're just going to throw it out, but because we need to rethink it. Because it's based on a lot of assumptions that now change. So why do daily stand-ups? Why do retros? Why write unit tests, right? All these things we do, user stories, for example. Rethink it. And here, disclaimer, I'm going to give you more questions than answers now for the rest of this talk, right? I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers. But what happens, right? When product development is 10x faster, it already is, but maybe in a year it's 100x faster. So what does that mean? And when code is mostly AI generated and anyone can do it, not just developers. What happens when every Agile team has autonomous AI agents as colleagues? Or when every person has instant access to any domain expert in the form of this AI? Expert on Agile, expert on database, expert on security, it's all right there. it changes the nature of things. And what does not change, right? Some things don't change. We're still humans, right? We're still these meat bags, and we still have motivations and soft things like feelings, and we need certain things in place to be able to function and have a, feel good and build great stuff. All that is still there, right? I don't think we're changing at all. But AI, lots of other stuff is changing. So we've got to think about that. What changes and what doesn't, and how do we accommodate this? For example, I think most principles behind Agile are still relevant, maybe even more relevant than before. So iterative incremental development, transparency, self-organizing teams, all that is super valuable. Like if you take a waterfall style specification and go to an AI model and say, build this, it probably won't succeed very well. It'll spend a lot of time building something that probably wasn't what you wanted. Just like when you go to a development team, right? Just that the AI might spend an hour and the development team might spend half a year. But the result is still, damn it, this is not what I wanted. So if you can split it into smaller stories and find a minimum viable product and kind of give it feedback as you go and connect it directly to a user, all the stuff you'd want to do with a team, do that with AI and it will also work better. So the principles are kind of the same, but the practices change, right? Daily stand-up, unit tests, product backlog, all these practices, the way we do it needs to be reevaluated. So some things I'm seeing already now as kind of concrete changes is team size. We don't need typically 6-7 person teams anymore. Normally with like typical Scrum thing is you need a certain number of people to cover all the different skills you need. Well, you have AI, which knows almost like it knows a lot about everything. So you don't need as many people just to cover the skills. So typically I think we're going to have smaller teams and therefore more teams. So more and smaller teams. And then you of course got to deal with collaboration across the teams. So teams of one AI and one or two people I think are going to become the norm going forward. And then the question is, if it's such a small team, do you need like a sprint planning meeting? Do you need a daily stand-up? Maybe not. You're sitting next to each other, talking all day. So the need for rituals and kind of bureaucracy gets reduced. Shorter sprints or no sprints, that's been a trend from before, but it's getting even stronger now. I used to think that a 2-week iteration or sprint was quite short. Like it's a bit challenging to build something useful in 2 weeks. Now I can't imagine doing a 2-week sprint. That just feels like forever, right? Even 1 week feels a bit long. So that perspective changes. More frequent releases and role changes, right? When everyone can code and coding is no longer the bottleneck, then what is a developer? Well, focus more on architecture and design, on quality. While smaller things, people just build themselves. But then we need to manage all that change. And how do we, ensure the quality of that code? And there's just all these things we need to rethink. So yeah, a bit of a wrap up here. I see these two as kind of complementary or more like a reinforcing loop. As an Agilist, as a person who knows about Agile stuff, you're better equipped to use AI effectively because you're better equipped to describe a problem in a clear way. You're better equipped to slice things into stories. The good old template as a blah, I want blah, so that blah, right? They use a story template. That's great as a prompt, right? So, and of course, you can use AI to help you slice a story as well. But all these different techniques that you use as kind of an Agile expert or a practitioner make you better at using AI as well, which is great. And vice versa, other direction. AI helps you become more agile because it helps you iterate faster and it helps shorten the feedback loop, helps you focus on the big picture and not get stuck on where to put the damn curly brace, right? So yeah, I would say my takeaway here is really, it's a bit scary sometimes. This technology is going so fast and it's not perfect. It hallucinates sometimes, it makes mistakes, but never mind that, right? The technology is improving so fast and it's more about your skill. If you know how to use the models, hallucination is not really a problem. There's all kinds of ways to deal with it. Plus the models are getting better and better. So embrace the technology, experiment with it, learn it, coach your teams to use it, and just think of it like the new internet, right? You can't really function in today's society without using and understanding internet. I think it'll be similar with AI in the future. So no one knows where things are going. No one knows where we're going to end up. But I think it's a fairly safe bet that if you and your teams know how to use this technology effectively, you're going to be better positioned for whatever that future looks like. So yeah, I have 20 seconds left. What am I going to do with all this time? Thank you very much.